So we've looked at mobile first design. Now let's look at the affordance and ask ourselves the very odd question: what makes a button, or what makes any item that we're supposed to engage with, making it inviting so that you can engage with it? So it could be the handle of a kettle, or maybe even a cup. It could be a lever, or any kind of navigational device that is telling us, look, this needs to go in this direction, or this needs to be pressed. So ask yourselves, what makes a button a button? If you look at, say, common navigation cues in the world around us, so like an elevator's panel, the buttons will always be inviting. They will always be raised. They will always be encouraging the user. This is there to be interacted and engaged with, and also will be labeled correctly. So all of the floor numbers will be labeled next to it. Again, these are cues to actually tell us what each button actually does. When designing navigation items, you should always make sure that everything is uniform, but then with subtle differences. So you could use iconography, you could use color to actually indicate that these are a part of a family, but some of these buttons do specific things. Maybe they will start recording, maybe they will start switching the TV off, etc., etc. Furthermore, the functions should be clear as well. So maybe they're all uniformed and round in this case of a typewriter, but some of the red keys may be removing certain elements. Maybe the different font is being used by the different colors that are being incorporated. So you want to make sure that the functionality is actually clear. So in material design, we have, which is Google's design language and design guidelines, we have different UI patterns. So from bottom navigation, which I mentioned earlier, you have tabs, you have what we call the fab, and you can actually explore the material design guidelines to find out more about these different navigational patterns. There are many, and there's rationale for different ones, so you can explore that later on, but just want to give an overview of how you can make affordances a lot more straightforward and easier when it comes to UI. So one thing to consider is hierarchy, and that's using space, maybe height and size of an element to show that this is different from the rest of the page or app, and this is there to be engaged with. So you have an icon, you have the font sizes are much more bolder, it's much more larger than the rest of the copy, it's designed with enough space to indicate that this is something that's very different. So using hierarchy is a good way to actually show that a UI element is there to be engaged with. Likewise, using color and shape to indicate that this is something that should be tapped or clicked on is another way of doing things. And likewise, in this example, you can see there are buttons on the page that can also possibly be engaged with as well. And you can find out more about this from the material design guidelines at material.io. So when designing for affordances, you need to make sure the buttons are inviting. Maybe drop shadows, maybe making them really big, make the main call to action as prominent on the page as possible. You can do that by using size and space to show hierarchy, but you can also use color and shape and iconography to do this as well. So you really want to encourage the user and inform them as quickly as possible that this is the main call to action, the main key thing that they need to tap or click on. And that's what designing for affordances is all about.